So we move on to the final thread, investing in Israel. So by now, we've met funds, we've seen equity crowdfunders, we've met subject and domain matter experts, and we've seen the startups themselves. So we want to invest in Israel. How do I go about that? The rest of the afternoon is going to be devoted to that topic. So please welcome Hovav, Head of Investor Relations at the Israeli Ministry of the Economy and Industry, to lead, to do the next beginning of that piece, the introduction to that piece. Sorry, Hovav. Thank you.
So, good afternoon, everybody. My pleasure to open the Investing in Israel session. We've heard a lot during the summit here about why you should invest in Israel and do business in Israel. I would like to take this opportunity to discuss a little bit about how you can do this and how we, as the Israeli government, can support you during this process. So first, I'd like to make a little bit of introduction about who we are. Invest in Israel is the Israeli government's investment promotion agency. Our role is basically to brand Israel as an attractive destination for foreign investors, to attract foreign companies to invest in our country, to support them throughout the decision-making process, as well as through the investment process itself. And we even support existing investors in Israel. We see ourselves as a bridge between the private sector and the government. We are part of the government, but we do understand your needs as a private sector, and we act as your representative in front of all the government agencies and ministries that are relevant. We do not have a set of incentives of our own, but we act as an integrator among all relevant agencies in the government. And we do this in order to make your investment process as efficient and productive as possible. We operate basically in three different ways. First is promotion. In this capacity, we organize and we participate in investment events in Israel, abroad, including this wonderful event here in Sydney. We prepare all sorts of marketing and promotional materials, including the Invest in Israel guide that is available on our website. And we are very active on different digital and social media channels. Facilitation, this is the part that I'm responsible for. I'll elaborate it a bit more later, but just very briefly. In this capacity, we provide the investor with all the information that they need in order to make the investment decision, and we support them throughout the process. And after-care service, we also, in addition to bringing the investors, we believe that we need to take care of the existing investors in Israel as well. So we don't think that it is enough to attract the investor, but we have to make sure that the investors that already are in Israel are happy, that they stay in Israel, and basically, and hopefully, that they will also expand their activities in Israel even further. So for that purpose, we established the Aftercare Service Center, which is basically providing a red phone for foreign investors to solve and deal with any problem, any issue that they may have, and we're trying to help them. So I mentioned that we are working as an integrator, and here are some of the bodies that we're working with. So we have the Investment Center, which provides investment grants. We have the industrial zones and the Israeli Land Authority, which allocate land for industrial purposes. We have the Population and Immigration Authority, which provides visas and work permits. Of course, the Office of the Chief Scientist, now called the Innovation Authority, which is responsible for supporting industrial R&D. We work, of course, with the Israeli Tax Authority, municipal authorities for local support, and with employment and vocational training for support in that area. And last but not least, with the Foreign Trade Administration, which is the body within our ministry that operates the network of economic representatives around the world, including, of course, Eti Levy here in Sydney. So let's talk a little bit about what we can do for you. So first, we can provide you with information to help you make your decision to invest in Israel. So we provide you information in several ways. We can answer any question that you may have regarding investments in Israel, or we can respond to RFIs that we receive from foreign companies and site selection companies. Now, in these RFIs, we provide very detailed information about the investment incentives that Israeli government has to offer, about operational costs, such as electricity cost, local taxes, etc. Site selection, we go as deep as specific sites in specific industrial areas, availability of sites, cost of construction, cost of rental, so very, very detailed information. We provide information about human resources, availability, tax, labor laws, costs of labor, etc. And of course, we talk about taxation, local regulation, and transportation availability and costs. Now, we do not only provide information. We actually take you by hand as an investor and work with you together throughout the investment process to make sure that the process goes as smoothly and efficiently as possible. We arrange meetings for you and visits. For example, we arrange for one company meetings with the Israeli rail company to discuss transportation costs. For another company, we arrange meetings with the Israeli Ministry of Health to discuss local regulation for a pharma company. And we take you by hand and walk with you and visit different industrial areas to discuss site selection, potential, and availability of different sites. In general, our role is to basically cut the red tape for you and make sure that your experience as an investor in Israel is as positive as possible. Now, in addition to that, in some cases, when we see that there is a marked failure, we actually step in and try to make some policy changes. And I'll give you one example for that. We had an American consumer good manufacturer that was interested in moving into Israel. Now, we wanted to attract him to go to a specific industrial area in the northern part of Israel, and that area specifically struggled for many years to attract quality investors. So what we did is we worked together with the Israeli Ministry of Finance, with the Ministry for the Development of the Galilee and the Negev, and we actually were able to provide additional 10% grant on top of the regular grants that they were entitled to for that investor. So this was actually the game changer for that investor and what actually convinced them to make the investment and go through with the process. So I mentioned already the aftercare support. So I'll just move on to the actual incentives that the Israeli government offers. So very briefly, we offer 3 types of incentives. Incentives for investment and manufacturing, basically in the forms of grants and tax benefits. Industrial R&D support. This is provided by the Office of the Chief Scientist. We have here at this conference Hadass, which can talk about it a lot better than I can, and employment subsidies and vocational training support. Just a little bit numbers. Now, before I go into the numbers, in general, the Israeli government provided its main support to areas in the periphery, basically the northern, southern parts of Israel, as well as the city of Jerusalem. Now, the general corporate tax in Israel is about 25%. You can see that qualified and approved companies can receive 16% tax rate in the center of Israel, 9% in the periphery priority areas, and the special priority company can get even 8% and 5%. You can see that we're talking about investment grants. This refers only to the national priority areas, and we offer a 20% investment grant. Now, if you decide to invest in the Negev, in the southern part of Israel, you may be entitled to an additional 10%, so the total incentive package will be of 30%. I mentioned that I'll skip the industrial R&D incentives, and I'll move to the employment incentives. Again, you can see that most of the incentives here refer to the national priority areas, the periphery. So we have basically the main 4 types of subtracts. The first is the high salary subtract, which refers mainly to employment in the high-tech sector. And over there, we give 25% subsidies for up to 48 months. And this all only to salaries about 2.5 times the average salary in Israel. The second track is the anchor sub-track. And this refers basically to businesses that make a very substantial impact on the employment in that specific region. Now, the third sub-track is a very interesting one. Refers only to the cyber sector and only to specific location in the southern part of Israel around the city of Beersheba. Now, we've had the cyber section discussion here, but I'll just say this, that the Israeli government decided to have Beersheba and that area as a cyber center for Israel and moved a lot of its cyber activities to that region, including government as well as the defense related. And the idea is to create a cyber hub, which includes government, military, industry, and academia. And we already see quite a few multinational companies moving their cyber operations to that area. And the last employment subtrack is the special population one. And this is the only one that covers the entire country of Israel. Basically, in this, the idea behind this subtrack is that we wanted to bring into the labor market populations that traditionally have low participation rate in the workforce. And these include ultra-Orthodox Jews, minority women, and people with disabilities. And for those population, employers who hire people from those populations can receive subsidies of 10 to 37.5% for at least 30 months. Now, the last issue that I would like to discuss here and mention is the OECD's recommendation regarding BEPS. BEPS, for those of you who are not familiar, stands for base erosion and profit shifting. And this refers to actually tax planning strategies that exploit all sort of gaps and mismatches in tax rules to shift profits from where the actual work is done to countries with low or no tax and very low economic activity. Now, the Israeli government has seen this as a very good opportunity, as now the OECD gives tools to governments to be able to tax the companies where their actual content and actual IP and work is being done. So we see it as an opportunity, and as of July of this year, the Israeli government issued a resolution that basically states that we want to improve the capability to attract foreign companies with special emphasis on technology multinational companies. So what we're talking about is the proposal that's supposed to be and is expected to be part of our next year budget of 6% corporate income tax rate and 4% withholding tax on dividends for companies with a consolidated revenues of about 10 million Israeli shekel. That's about $2.5 billion. We're talking about mainly about the multinational companies. This is one of the most competitive tax rates globally available. For smaller companies, we provide 12% corporate tax rate and 4% dividend rate, still very, very competitive tax rates. So if you're thinking about the next location of your R&D center or where to register your IP, I think that these rates and these incentives make Israel a very, very competitive place to be. So thank you very much, and I'm free to any questions that you may have later on. Thank you.
Thank you.